Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your boy Paragon John. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to yet again another video. Before we get into today's topic, obviously, as you guys can tell, I'm in a little bit of a different environment than where I usually am. It's Sunday, it's a beautiful day outside, and I happen to spend a lot of my free time outside anyway, so I just figured, you know what, if I'm out here anyway, and I have an idea for a video, may as well just set up the camera outside and record. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. How to spot player characters in real life, or soul beings, or main characters, or people who have taken control of their life in some way, people who have agency over their avatar body, over their life in general, and that sort of thing. And now, if you guys haven't seen my video titled How to Spot NPCs in Real Life, or non-player characters, this video is basically just going to be the exact opposite of that video. So every characteristic and trait that the non-player characters have, the player characters are going to be the exact reverse of that, the exact opposite of that. So if you've seen the NPC video, this video is just going to be the exact opposite of that video. So let's go ahead and jump right into how you can spot player characters, or PCs, in real life. So in my How to Spot NPCs in Real Life video, I talked about how NPCs will have this strange emptiness feeling to them. Like when you're around them, you'll feel this strange emptiness, like they're an empty shell walking, like there's nothing inside of their head, there's nothing behind their eyes, they're just kind of existing, like some kind of robot. Well, the player character is the opposite of that. So they have a strong presence. They have an identity of their own. You know, they don't feel empty. They feel like they are filled up. You know, it feels like inside of their avatar body, there is really something there. There is a real entity or energy or force there that is in control of this person. You know, and it's like it doesn't. You don't feel this emptiness. You actually sense a real presence with this person. You can sense it in the ether, you can feel it, and you're not really sure how you know, but you just do. The NPCs lack presence. Like it feels like there's not, the lights are on, but no one's home, sort of thing. It's like you can look into this person's eyes and you don't really feel like there's anything behind them with the NPCs. The player characters are the opposite of that. So the player characters have a strong presence, right? Or they have more of a stronger presence, should I say, than the NPC. It's very obvious when you're around this person that, okay, there is someone behind this avatar's eyes. Like if I look into this individual's eyes, I can very clearly sense and feel in the ether or tell some kind of way energetically that there is some kind of force behind this person's eyes. You know, that this person is here with me and present in reality, in the real world with me, okay? And you can kind of sense that. The player characters feel, again, like there is a player behind this person's eyes controlling this person's avatar body. You know what I mean? You can just sense that there is someone here with me. You know what I mean? In this room, like you're in the same room with a player character, or let's just say you're in a room with a bunch of NPCs, but there's like one or two player characters in the room. The player characters will have a different type of presence to them in the ether. You know what I mean? Like you will feel like there is a force or an entity that is here with me behind this person's eyes. Like inside of this person, there is a strong presence. There is a real being who is in the present moment with me right now and is just like here, which is the exact opposite of the NPC. The NPC doesn't feel like they're here at all with you. So that's one thing. Number two, the player characters question things. Okay, the player characters, they are individuals who question reality, okay? They question the system, they question the world in general, they question the education system, they question things they've been taught. In other words, they don't just blindly follow whatever society promotes and they just go along with whatever society, whatever the popular thing is or whatever the current thing is. They just go along like the NPCs do. The player characters, they question that kind of stuff. They don't just blindly follow like sheep. So in other words, most people inherit their beliefs, but the player characters, they examine their beliefs. They have like a metacognition. They have knowledge about knowledge. You know what I mean? They can witness their thoughts. They're not just like a mindless robot that's at the mercy of whatever emotion they feel in the moment or whatever thoughts come through their mind, like the NPCs. The player characters, again, are able to question their own beliefs and are able to understand how and why they believe certain things, you know. So like, for example, like if an NPC was born in a certain place, the NPC would grow up to just adopt all the social norms of that place, and that's their whole life. That's all they ever know is just their small town that they grow up in, and they just completely adopt the culture, and they fit right in to wherever they're born into. The player character is not that way at all. They don't just automatically follow trends. They don't automatically follow tribes or follow social expectations or stuff like that. They're willing to change their mind whenever they're presented with truthful information. They're not just like ideologically binded to whatever the culture that they grew up in. You know what I mean? They question things. They ask, is this really what I believe? Or is this just what I've been told to believe? Okay, the player character understands that there's a lot of different type of information out there. Some of it's true, some of it's false. The player character is able to understand that. So, in other words, the player character doesn't just accept the mission, it asks who assigned it, okay? So the player character is a little bit more of an independent thinker. In other words, they think for themselves. They don't just let society tell them who to be or what to think or what to believe, or they don't drink the Kool-Aid of society. In other words, you think for yourself. Like you have your own kind of mind and you can think for yourself, all right? Number 2, player characters are creators rather than consumers, okay? Most NPCs are consumers. They just, you know, they scroll social media. They're on every single social media app. They just watch Netflix all day or watch Hulu all day or just play video games all day. They just consume, okay? Obey and consume. Like if you guys have ever seen the movie They Live, that's what the NPCs are like. They're just blatant, blind sheep consumers, all right? The player character is the opposite of that. So the player character lives creatively, where the NPC lives reactively. So the player character, they build things, they build businesses, they create art, they build relationships, they create communities, or they have stronger communities, should I say. In other words, the player character, they spend less time consuming content and more time producing value in the society. So this could be your business owners, this can be your filmmakers, this can be your content creators, good content creators, that is, not just like morons. You know, people who produce things in society, people who create, okay, people who innovate, people who are maybe inventors in some capacity, or innovators, or creative minds, or entrepreneurs, things like this. The point is, the player character is typically someone who has the ability to create and produce things in society, rather than the NPCs, where they just blindly follow and consume, okay? In other words, the player character has a sense of purpose beyond entertainment and social approval, all right? They don't really care to sit around and just watch mindless garbage like reality TV, for example, or just blindly kind of just doom scroll on social media, consuming garbage all day and shit like that. The player character, they don't really do that as much, not nearly to the same degree as the NPC, or maybe not even at all compared to the NPC, okay? So in other words, the player characters write chapters. They don't just scroll through them like the NPCs, okay? Number 3, and I kind of already touched on this one a little bit, but the player characters, they can think for themselves and they have the ability to stand alone, okay? With the NPCs, they just go along to get along. They just go along with the crowd. You know, they desperately need social approval. They desperately need validation from the crowd, from group settings and shit like this. The player character does not necessarily need that kind of stuff. The player character doesn't need constant validation. The player character does not need to be a part of the crowd, or does not need to be a part of the group, or doesn't need to fit in desperately like the NPCs do. They're just more comfortable being misunderstood. They're more comfortable being unpopular. They're more comfortable being themselves. You know, the NPCs have a hard time being themselves because, again, the NPCs don't really know who they are. The player character knows who they are. The player character has a strong sense of identity. The player character, their mind, if you're a player character, your mind is very clear, okay? It's like you don't have a lot of noise and distractions going on inside your head. You're very much so focused. You're very much so dialed in. You're very much so tapped into consciousness. You're very much so tapped into reality, okay? The NPC, they're more so in a state of escaping reality. The player character, you're dialed into reality. You don't really have anything to escape necessarily. So in other words, the player character, their identity comes from internal values rather than external applause. Okay, they don't need praise and validation and all this kind of stuff like the NPCs do. The NPCs are narcissists typically. The player character is not a narcissist. Okay, usually player characters have lots of empathy. Player characters are people that have love in their heart. Player characters are people that see their fellow human being as a fellow human being. You know what I'm saying? Not as the enemy, not as someone that they're not filled with jealousy and envy and hatred and conniving sort of energy and all this sort of stuff. The player character typically is a very pure soul. It's someone who probably has a mission here on Earth to fulfill, and they're trying to just fulfill their mission and then leave the planet and go back home. You know what I mean? To wherever the player character is from, because I feel like player characters are not really from this planet. Like player characters don't really fit into this world typically. If you're somebody who has never really fit into this world, or you've always been someone who's kind of questioned the world, you question everything, you question religion, you question systems, you question government, you have a more kind of authentic sort of identity to you. You question things, you think for yourself. You're probably somebody who's a player character. If you clicked on this video, if you've made it this far into the video, you're probably a player character. And the things that I'm saying are probably very validating and very relieving for you to hear. Now, so the overarching point with that is the player character typically is someone who doesn't necessarily fit in to this world in general. Okay. So again, if you're someone who has been very misunderstood throughout your life, or you never really fit into this world or to social trends, or like fit in with the group think and the social trends, or what the popular thing, the current thing, you're probably a player character. Okay, probably someone who thinks for yourself. You're probably someone with an independent mind. So to kind of wrap the last one up, a player character has the ability to sit in silence and think deeply and kind of reflect on themselves, and has a certain level of self-awareness and has strong self-awareness. The NPC is none of those things. The NPC cannot sit in silence. The NPC cannot think deeply. The NPCs are very shallow. They live on the surface. They believe whatever they're told, this sort of thing. And the NPC's life is usually just kind of like number in the system, number in the matrix sort of thing. They go to school, they graduate, they get a job they hate, they get married, and then that's the end of their life. You know, they live a very scripty, social, like society, social scripty sort of life. The player character has more of a unique story. The player character is someone who probably came from a very unique background in life. You're probably someone who went through many, many challenges as like a younger person, which forced you to grow into the adult that you are now. I've noticed with player characters, typically they either went through some kind of very unique pain or hardship at a young age that was very unique compared to like the people around them, or the NPCs around them, again, which shaped them into the unique individual that they are as an adult. So I've noticed that typically the NPCs live a more shallow, boring, predictable kind of social performance, social validation seeking, social approval kind of life. Again, number in the system kind of life. And just be like everyone else, no uniqueness at all. Never go on your own kind of journey in life. Never pursue any kind of mission or purpose, anything like that. Just get some job you hate, be like everyone else, and then that's just it. You're just kind of you're just an NPC, right? The player character, again, lives a more unique life. Typically, the player character is on their own purpose and mission in life. They know exactly why they're on the planet. They're filled with love in their heart and things like this. They understand the truth of reality typically. They understand the nature of reality. They have lots of self-awareness, and they're on their own journey in life. And another thing that I've noticed too is that this is kind of obvious, kind of self-evident, but the player characters are more of leaders, like natural leaders. Whereas the NPCs, they're kind of just more followers and sheep. You know, they just do whatever society does, do whatever they're told, believe whatever the authority figures tell them, believe whatever the people in power tell me and stuff like this, and just go along with whatever the current thing is. The player character is very much so the opposite of that. They are very much so a natural leader. They go their own way in life. You know, they don't just blindly follow like sheep. You know, the player character is more of a visionary. The player character is someone who is more capable of forging their own path in life, you know, in general, and having their own values and their own interests in their own worldview in general. You know, they don't just they don't just follow. They're not just a follower. They are like more of a natural leader. If you're a player character, you're probably somebody who has natural leader traits. Another thing I've noticed too, just to kind of go off on another tangent here, forgive me guys, but I'm kind of all over the place in this video, but I think you guys are following along. So one thing I've noticed about the player characters is that you can have a legit real conversation about real things with player characters. Like you can discuss deep topics with player characters, just about reality in general or philosophy or whatever, and they'll understand it. You know what I mean? They'll understand exactly what you understand as a player character yourself. Like player characters recognize other player characters. It's like, it's almost like it's you in another avatar body kind of thing. Like with the player characters, you guys have ever heard the phrase real recognize real? Well, player characters recognize player characters, okay? And simultaneously, the NPCs absolutely recognize you as a player character. If you're a player character, the NPCs are going to almost hate you for no reason. So if you're somebody who you've been around like certain workplaces or you are in school or certain places in society or whatever, and you notice like people around you seem to hate you or resent you for no apparent reason. You've done nothing to them. You treat them well. You just kind of mind your own business, whatever. But these people seem to resent you. That's the NPCs. That's because the NPCs recognize that you're a player character. They recognize that there is something about you that is different than the other entities that are around, okay? And what's different is that you're a player character. You have a real soul. You're present. You're conscious. You're here. You know what I'm saying? Like if you guys look, you guys can tell behind my eyes, there's something here. There's something going on. The player characters, they have a strong presence. Once again, I don't want to repeat myself. I mentioned that already in the video, but yes, the player characters, they're different than the NPCs, and so as a result, the NPCs kind of mob up against you. They kind of hate you. They kind of resent you. They kind of give you like a weird side eye. They kind of treat you like you're different, and it's because you are different. It's not because you're better or superior. It's just because you're a player character. It's just because you're someone who's awake in this world. It's because you're someone who's on a mission. You're someone who is conscious. You're someone who understands the deep things in life, or at least you think you do. You know, you like to think you do. Ultimately, the difference between the player characters and the non-player characters is that the player character feels like they are the author of their life. The NPC is not the author of their life. Their life just kind of happened to them. You know what I mean? And they're just like, well, what now? You know, life happened to the NPCs, and they just don't even, it was like the NPCs had no agency over their own life at all. The player character had full agency over his or her life. You know what I mean? It feels like the player character is the author of his life or her life. The player character didn't just live their life on autopilot. You intentionally lived your life in such a way to where you could manifest the life that you wanted in this realm, in this physical reality. You know what I'm saying? You actually had real agency over your life. You were like, I wanted to do this, so I did this. You know, I had an idea, and I made that idea into a reality by putting in work in the real world, and I made it into a reality. So in other words, it feels like the NPC did not choose their life, whereas the player character chose their life. It feels like their life is theirs. The NPC's life feels like the life they're living is not theirs. It's like a life that was assigned to them or something. The player characters just typically have more agency over their life and their self, it seems like, whereas the NPCs don't. So, yeah, that's kind of the video, guys. That's kind of the video. That's been my kind of what I've noticed when it comes to, is someone a player character or is someone an NPC, a non-player character? Is someone a soul being or is someone a non-soul being? And again, you can tell just in the ether, you can tell within the energy, you know, if you're a player character yourself, if you've made it this far in the video, you're probably a player character yourself, and you know that, you know when you're around an NPC, you know when you're around a group of NPCs, and you know when you're around a player character. You can just tell. There's something about this person that's different than the other people, that feels like they're more present, that feels like they have like a sense of power to them. You know what I mean? The player characters, they seem to have a more natural power to them than the NPC. The NPC feels like they're powerless just based on who they are. The player character, based on who they are, they just feel they have more power. They just have more power as an individual, as a person. So anyways, guys, yeah, that's the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if there are any other characteristics and traits or things that you've noticed that differentiate NPCs from player characters or PCs that you guys have noticed that I did not touch on in the video. So anyways, guys, yeah, that's the video. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Paragon John, and I will see you in the next one.